Okay, so we're going to do a code review, and here is the functionality that we're going to do this review on. We have this input field right here, and the placeholder text is Apple. So basically, you can type in any ticker, like Apple, for example, and as you're typing, it'll give you suggestions. What we're doing is, as we are typing, we are calling a search API, and I'll show you the code shortly, but we're calling a search API that, again, as we are typing, it finds matches from all the tickers that we have. Let's say these are American stocks. We have some other international stocks here too. But regardless, what we're doing is, again, we are searching for tickers. And if I type in Tesla, for example, and I click on it, it should say selected Tesla, and then the input field should clear once again. So that is the basic functionality. And we're going to do a code review on this one. So let's go see this code. Okay, so this code right here, this is a sloppy version of this code. This is pretty low quality code. There are a lot of changes, a lot of improvements we can make on this code. So we're going to do a review on this. And I want to approach this review from a priority standpoint. So I want to first point out the things that are just blaringly bad. And then I will talk about some of the more low-hanging fruits. So let's get started. Okay, right away, I see a function, autocomplete, fair enough. Moving on, the first thing that I see that's striking is we have these any types right here, just all over the place. We have all these any types, and the whole point of using TypeScript is to actually specify the type. So if you're going to use TypeScript, you might as well specify the types. This avoids these unnecessary runtime errors. The whole point of TypeScript is to catch this in compile time. So I want to just type in something like specify type right here. This is just for this line. I'm going to do this for every single line, but if it's such a problem, if it's such a global problem, then I can just type it in right here. I'll just type in something like global issues, right? And then I'll just specify what is a global issue, and that is specify the type. So these are global issues. I'll say no types. In fact, what we could do is, because it's a code review, I want to actually give actionable steps on what to do. So I'll say global to-dos, and then I will say specify types, just like that. Okay, so these are my global to-dos. So moving on. I want to see a type here. Okay, what else is blaringly bad? Well, if I move on here, of course, in any array, you got to specify the type. Moving on though. Inside this function, this handle search text, we want to know where is this function being called, handle search text, so we can figure out what's going on with this, right? So handle search text, if I go down, I see it's right here. It's called on the on change of the input right here. In other words, as I'm typing, I call handle search text. So this is the function that's running to actually call this API. As we see, we're making a GET request right here. So this right away is bad because I'm using Axios. That's not a big deal, but I don't want to directly access it like this. I want to abstract this in a way. And the reason that we want to abstract this is, think of it this way. If I ever change this API, this Axios, to something else, another service, and I use Axios all over the place like this, well then I'm going to have to change it in every single spot. So I want to abstract this. So what I'm going to do, I'll open up some multi-line comments here because there are a few problems that I see here. So I'll say something like abstract away Axios. All right. So what does that even mean? Abstract away Axios. So if we go, I'll show you what it looks like. I'll give you an example. So here we have a function. It's called get. This is just a service that we've created, and it abstracts Axios. You see how we're calling Axios. We're making our own version of get, and this just calls Axios.get. In other words, it's a wrapper around Axios. Again, the point of this is that if I were to change Axios to something else, I just have to do it in one spot. That's the whole point of a wrapper, and it's an abstraction in a way. So you want to abstract away Axios like this. Moreover, look at this. We have these hard-coded strings right here. That's not a good practice. So we'll say something like remove hard-coded strings. And in fact, it's not just that. This right here is not just any string. This right here is an endpoint. I actually want to specify a place where I place all my endpoints. because these aren't just strings. These are, once again, endpoints, and they have to match with whatever API or backend we are referring to. So this might look something like this. You have an endpoint file, call it search tradable symbol, call it whatever you want, but you specify the endpoint just like that. So, okay, well, we're not done here though, because we could abstract Apsios, we could remove the hard-coded string, but still, I don't want to just call and the abstracted version just like this get, just like that, because there's still a problem here. And the problem is, this still is not a very testable function right here. It's not a function that is a standalone function. It's an abstracted method or a function in this case. But I want to actually, what I want to do is create a module. In fact, I'll write in a testable module that performs the search tradable symbols, just like that. So again, what does this look like? You see, we have all this code here. It looks like a lot of boilerplate setup code. We don't want to do this every single time. So this too can be abstracted. In fact, I have this function here. It's called search tradable symbols. This is our abstracted API. What we're doing is we're making use of our get. Remember, this is the abstracted get right here. We're passing in our non-hard-coded string. This is the endpoint that we have. And this allows us to do a few more useful things. So what we're doing is, this is a standalone function. This is a testable function. And notice here, within the function itself, we are performing the transform. So if I go back here, notice here, without this scenario, I have to first get the symbols, and then I have to transform this right here. And this is not a pattern that ensures that we don't repeat ourselves. We're continuously repeating ourselves here. This transformation might happen several times. If we were to call this searchable symbols, get tradable symbols multiple times, this transformation has to be performed multiple times. We don't want to repeat ourselves. So stop repeating logic, and we'll say abstract the transformation. So in other words, this thing right here is the transformation. We're filtering out whatever the API gives us and we're putting it to whatever we want. Again, this has to be done in an abstract fashion. We have a function here called transform tradable symbols. If I were to click into this, it does exactly that. Now this is also testable. This is a function by itself and it's testable. Again, the whole point here is that we're abstracting things away, making functions testable. So that's that. Okay, so fair enough. And we are still not done because we're performing an API call, a GET request here, but we want to handle errors. What if this thing errors out? What if it doesn't give us what we want? So there's a lot of scenarios that can happen. So we want to handle that. So handle errors. And this could be just as simple as wrapping all this in a try catch block. Now, this is not, again, this must be abstracted. So this must be wrapped in a try catch. So wrap abstracted version of this in try catch. So that's that. In fact, I will show you later on in this video exactly what the better version of this code looks like. Okay, so let's move on. So going down here, still see these problems everywhere, but we've already included that in our global to-dos. So let's move on. Okay, this is interesting. We see the e.target.id. You'll see all this code when you want to perform any sort of DOM-based actions. You want to get the target, you want to get the ID. Fair enough, but this too must be typed. But moreover, I can get a runtime error if, let's say, e were undefined or target were undefined. Let's say target were undefined, right? e.target was undefined. I'm going to get a runtime error that says cannot find ID, cannot read property ID of undefined. So what do I want to do? I want to do optional chaining, and this is an interesting feature. All this does, I had a question mark just like that. And what this does is it says, if this is defined, move on. If this is defined, move on and move on. This allows for the avoidance of runtime errors. So that's that. So I'll just type that into. So that's that. Now, because it's a code review, we're not changing any code here. So I just want to show you this. But again, I'll show you the fully updated code later on. But this is just for the sake of that. And again, optional chaining must be done here too. So that's another spot that we want to do the optional chaining in. Okay, let's move on. So moving on now, we see, let's dive into the actual HTML of this thing right here. So first glaringly bad thing is this right here, placeholder Apple. I have hard-coded strings once again, but this is not just a hard-coded string. I want to actually put this in a translation bundle. So let's do that. In fact, I'm gonna specify this as a global consideration. So I'll say something like use translation / language bundles. All right. This is always a good practice when you want to, anytime you're writing any software that's quality or production or scalable, you want to never hard code strings like that. Okay. Let's move on. So is there anything else that is glaringly bad right here? Of course, this is another hard coded string. We don't want to have that. Moving on. We're just saying if the tradable symbols has something in it, then show our results, our search results. And then when we click, we say handle symbol select. Once again, this any cannot be that. We want to specify the type. So I go into this symbol select here. Once again, this right here, we already have the problems, the optional chaining and obviously the typing of this needs to be specified. Okay, so looks like the main issue here was the Axios problem. So now that we're done this preliminary code review, I want to show you a better version, a higher quality version of this code. So let's go and look at that. So I have another autocomplete here. Okay, so right away we see we have typed things. So we have a HTML form element. This is the type for the form reference. Moving on, we have a type for our state. This is a tradable symbol. This is an interface that has been declared right here, where I'm saying a tradable symbol must have a name and a ticker. Okay, moving on. And we have, what else? We have specific types here for our events. So I know exactly, just by looking at this function, what the event, the DOM event that this function is responding to. See, right away, I should be able to tell. In other words, the code should be self-documenting. The types should allow for the self-documenting of codes. Okay, and here I see optional chaining right here, the question mark. I also specify the type of the input. So now I know which type of HTML element that I'm getting the value from right here. Okay, moving on. You see here, I've wrapped this in a try catch block where if this API fails, well then I simply update the trading symbols to an empty array. That's that. It's been handled right now. Moving on though, we want to actually specify, again, the API that this is coming from. I've already showed you the API, remember, right here. Search tradable symbol. This abstracts our Axios abstraction. It ensures that we're not hard coding anything. And it also calls a transform, which it too is testable. So all of this is testable and abstracted away within just one call like this. You see, compare this line to all this stuff right here. All of this stuff is not needed. This can be abstracted away. This is repeating ourselves if we keep doing this over and over. This keeps things dry, which is don't repeat yourself. Okay, moving on. Another type specified. We have more optional chaining, another type. That's good. Optional chaining, I like that. Okay, here we see we have specified our translation. So this translation is coming from an IATN bundle. So we have all of our translations here. This way we can seamlessly switch between languages if we so choose, that is. And what else here? Of course, even the events themselves on the click events, the click handlers, that's being specified. This is a mouse event. When I submit, this is a form event, right? And so on. So, okay. Now, one more thing here that I wanted to just briefly talk about is this function right here, this API search. Whenever you make an API call to an external resource or even your own backend, let's say, a lot of times there's a debate on whether you want to use you can call it a saga. There's many other ways, but a way of handling side effects. Now, the reason that I did not handle a side effect here is because this search is confined to this page and the state is handled by useState. You see, if the state were a global state across my entire application, well, that's when useState would not suffice, and I would want to use something perhaps like Redux, and perhaps I want to use a Saga to handle side effects here. That's just an aside, but I'm just letting you know sometimes things are overkill, sometimes things are needed. So that's that. Overall though, hope you found this video useful, and that's that.